All right, we got everybody back.
playing with the times that they show up at 4 a.m.
You ready? Yeah. All right, team. We'll move on with the single federal audit report.
Thank
Director
you.
Ryder, thank you.
Yes, so this evening in your board packet, you have 2 reports under this agenda topic. I won't walk through all of them, but I will point out what you need to know about each of them. So if you take a look at the required communications, I would point out that at the bottom of page 1 and at the top of page 2 of that report, you will find essentially the 3 things that you need to know about this process. A little background first, I'm sorry. Back in November, on the 3rd of November, you received an audit report from our auditors. At that time, they also told you they could not complete the single audit report at that point because they were still awaiting federal guidance, and with the shutdown of the federal government, that wasn't available to them. Since then, they have received it. I do know that no additional testing was required on their part in the process of between then and now, but they are completing that process now of that single audit, and it's time to just report out then those findings. So with regard to that, the audit opinions and findings, one thing they do is they check to see whether our schedule of expenditures of federal awards, that's all federal funds that we received, is it fairly stated in all material respects, and they found that it was as of June 30, 2025. They checked to see the results of the tests indicating whether or not we had complied in all material respects with the types of compliance requirements that could have a direct or material effect on our major federal programs. And there too, they found no issues in that regard. The last thing they check is to see if there's any deficiencies in the district's internal controls over compliance, and that they would consider a significant deficiency. There is one. It is the same one that was present the year before. It is one that is rather tricky, because although it's a finding, I can tell you that we didn't work with any vendor that was debarred or any vendor that was suspended. However, it's the documentation of checking it as frequently as they're expecting. So it's not enough to do it when you first get them as a new vendor. You must do it as well every time you reach a certain threshold of expenditures with them. And that's the tricky part. So we think we've got the process now in place to address this and to keep us out of trouble that way. But that's the deal. And so I'm not too concerned about that one because it's a common one and it's a tricky one to finally satisfy where everyone is on the same page and agreeing that we've done what we can in that regard. So this kind of lays out what it was that they found in that. The CAP, which is the corrective action plan, is listed in a separate document, which talks just about that finding, and you can see the 2025-001 is the current year finding, and backside of that page is the 2024. The last document that's included in this packet under this agenda item is the actual federal single audit report, where you can see our federal programs listed, as well as a lot of repetitive information from the other 2 documents, but it's all in one place. Happy to answer any questions there may be.
Board members, any questions or clarifications needed on that?
Oh, I remember you mentioning it during the audit process, so thank you for the further explanation.
Okay.
Okay, hearing none, we can move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the 2026-27 board budget. Dr. Thomas?
Actually, I'll turn over
Oh,
to
to
Director Ryder.
Director Ryder?
Yep.
Okay, very
I'm
good.
gonna pull it up on the computer again, this one.
Thank you.
Simply because we have, there was a request for the board budget showing the last year expenditures as well. So that's what I'm pulling up here, and hopefully you can, let me see if I can get this larger. I think if I do this, that will help. Okay, so this is the school board portion of the budget. First column of numbers being the fiscal year 25 actual expenditures. The next column to the right is the original budget from this current year. And then the middle column of numbers is the revised budget for the current year, followed by what is so far year-to-date expended, and then what we are projecting that budget to look like for the 26-27 year. There are two parts of this budget. You'll notice these first two sections all have program code 010, which is the third set of numbers from the left on the account code structure, and that tells me that's a board expenditure. And then down below on the second part of this page is one that has a 199, and that's what we use to identify election costs. So previously, we did not have a budget in '25 for the election. So at that point in time, the board budget only consisted of these first two sections, but we incurred actual expenditures. So you can see where the original '26 budget didn't have anything, or didn't have much there, and we realized we needed to have more, and that was done in the revision. So I hope that helps to explain that a little bit better. I'm happy to answer any questions otherwise.
Board members? Director Mason?
Yeah, I have a few. I'm just trying to understand maybe the adjustments that were made. And for the record, I am all for taking this down to the lowest level possible because I feel like I want our money to go to our students. But the travel, conventions, and conference went up like 4.5 thousand. What was the reason for the increase there? So under school board budgets, the third one down, is that 6,500? From like $2,000. I don't know what it
Right, so there's, you're seeing a budget projected for next year that has been increased by $4,500 on that line item.
Yep. For what reason?
The potential that we'll have 4 new board members, and I have to take phase 1 and 2 with MSBA, other MSBA workshops.
Okay.
That was enough to cover it.
So just the conference stuff, not the travel. Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Okay.
Travel would be like mileage.
Sure, okay. You explained one of these. And then the additional, like, I think the printing and binding is way up to 5,000. Is that for election, like, materials and
Yes,
with expectation of like a levy, or what?
you're
is
seeing the
reason?
5,000 under the election, and that is for levy materials, excuse me.
Okay, so that would be for levy materials.
But there's the printing and binding, that's, which one did you want, under the
Yeah,
school
the
board
printing and
budgets or under the
binding, that's
election?
like $5,000, and it's
bottom
only
one.
been like
Okay.
500 or 1,000. Okay, so it was 10 grand in '25. So that's specifically for the levy. I think you answered the rest of my questions. Thank you.
Anyone else?
No, I just, I agree with Director Mason. I think any ways that we can make to reduce expenses with our school board budget going forth for the balance of this year and then even into next year. I know we were asked if we wanted to take an AMSB training course, and my concern is we're spending money on consulting fees rather than spending money on our students. And there's a lot of free classes. I'd be happy to pass them on to you.
Director
I'm happy to do that, but I do not support spending additional money on consulting fees or trainings this year. So, thank you.
And just to protect the record, there wasn't additional money being spent on that training. That training is an optional thing for board members to either to choose to do or not to do. And that was covered outside of the board budget, so.
But Chair Brolian, wasn't it $200 per board member to take it? It does cost money, regardless of which budget it comes out of.
But it's not taking away from anything. It wasn't taking away from our specific board budget.
I'd rather the
And
money go to
the
students.
training, again, the board members can choose to do the training or not to do the training, so. Any other questions or comments on the board budget?
No, I'm happy to see it went down, actually. So I think that's, if everybody else is being asked to reduce their budget, we should as well. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next up is the levy survey update.
Thank you, Chair Bullion, Board Directors. So at our last time together, there was a desire to have some type of very brief survey go out to the community still. And, you know, there was mixed conversations. I think several felt we kind of knew the big themes, but wanted to have some kind of short survey that would go out. So we didn't know how much we should front load on the survey, and I also didn't want to put costing here. We'll talk about some costing tonight, but I didn't want to have it in print, because then the moment something goes in print, people say that's the actual number. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but the first portion of the survey is obviously just to validate that we're making sure that we're getting our residents, our community members taking the survey and not another community stacking the deck. And then when we go down into part two, the actual 2 questions, because we were saying really short and sweet. The first one, just capturing, trying to get a sense, what are the things that are, that's very important to you that you want to have protected or you want to see restored. We started off by listing some examples, but we were wondering whether we were we would be accused of leading the conversation in that. And so we kind of pulled back from listing out examples, but people could write that in. And then question number 2 is trying to reconcile the willingness to financially support the things that you think are very valuable. And again, we heard mixed conversations from the board to say just show a number. Then we also thought we should talk a little bit about what are some examples of how much it would cost to do certain things, so that you all had an understanding of that as well. And so, and then also, I think Director Smith, a couple of board meetings ago, just asked also what, you know, given what you think would need to happen to really respond to bolstering, you know, the outcomes and experiences for kids from the academic standpoint, what would that look like and what would that take? So we kind of started with that, and then we could itemize, like, this is what it would cost if we were doing class size. This is what it would cost to look at advanced differentiation, or to look at intervention supports, et cetera. So we have some of that ready to discuss with you all tonight. And I don't know if we want to start there and then just kind of open it up to figure out what of any of these dollar conversations would you want to see inside this to lead the conversation on the survey, or do you want to just keep it kind of blank? And then our initial thoughts here are showing a lower investment, basically maintaining what we have. If you all recall, that maintain what we have just to stay afloat was around that $7 million, and that was roughly the $32 additional. And then the moderate would, you know, in higher would go up from that. And we can certainly talk about some of the costing models that we've worked with Elders as well. And I believe we also, correct me if I'm wrong, Director Ryder, we also noted the older Morris Leatherman range of 20, and so just to show the board, if 20 from that survey, it was like 15 to and it went up to 20 in the most recent survey that he did metro-wide. What would that look like? So we thought we would just open up maybe with some of those dialogues around those models, and then see how that might inform what we should add to the actual survey questions itself. Start with that, Director Ryder?
Okay, so we will start with this then, I think, as you just made mention of it. This is, you've seen portions of this before, where we spoke about the first column of numbers, which is the $3.3 million and $180 or $15 per month. and that would be in addition to where we are now. All of this is in addition to where we are right now, okay? The added column is the 486 in the pupil authority, and that's almost 4.5 million there. And that is the $20 per month that was referenced from previous. You saw the third column of numbers for tax impact, the 377 previously, and that's the $7 million that we talked about, and that's at almost $32 per month. And then there is one listed here that is 807, and the ask here was, what is it gonna take to get to 15 mil? And not so much about how much per month, but rather show me what it would do to see an additional 15 mil. And so that's just out there for a purpose of discussion. All of these numbers I'm referencing are the, sorry,
Director Ryder, can I interrupt? So with the 15 mil, what was that dollar amount?
807, sorry, my math in my head isn't very good anymore. It's about $67.
Okay.
Per
Thank
month.
you, sorry.
Nope, that's fine. Absolutely, thank you for that. Hard for me to always know what you need there, so thank you. Does that help there?
Yes.
And then I'm referencing the row of numbers that show the 525. And that is the average homestead property.
And Director Ryder, does the, does the 1,633, is that the dollar, like right now we have the 624, or is the 1,633 on top of the 624?
All of these numbers are on top of the 624 we
That
have.
number would be 22 something, okay,
Yes,
okay.
yep.
And does this also take into consideration the fact that, like, I know I had shared with you that example, how you can take a $500,000 house in Shakopee, and they have a $1,600 levy.
Yep.
And they pay the exact same amount of property taxes to the school district as the same house in Prior Lake, that we have a 600 per pupil unit levy.
Yep.
Because we have fewer residents, less commercial. And so does this model take into account all those tax factors? I mean, I'm just trying to get my arms around that.
It does. This is solely talking about the operating referendum.
Right, but
Okay.
it's talking about the whole, like, balance of, like, we have less commercial and we have more
Yes.
farm and all that whole calculation is included in there.
And for us, the impact to the taxpayer homeowner is very close on the operating referendum calc to that which is the capital projects
Right.
tax rate, right? And in some districts, you'll find that that is a much bigger gap. And so in those districts, it's far easier to pass the operating referendum than it is the capital projects. And it all has to do with the tax properties that,
The calculation, yeah, I mean, I was shocked that
Commercial versus not.
Shakopee has a $1,600 levy, and they pay the exact amount of taxes to the school district.
Yes.
As we do in Prior Lake.
yes,
And which makes it more difficult
It does.
to pass a levy when we're more tax sensitive. So, thank you. I think the only other thing is, with the inflationary factor, does that included in here at all?
yeah,
or-
so when talking inflationary factor, this is something we'd have to educate people on, but you will not find anyone's tax impact data showing that because there is no inflation in the first year.
Right, yeah.
So
So this is
instead,
really first-year impact?
this is just first year.
Okay.
Yep,
If I could just add a couple of things, so, so that point here that we've been talking about for a little while now, we had in our first levy conversation, we had the bar graph, and then this time around, we changed that bar graph to kind of norm for what Director Atkinson's talking about, and that is, we compared our district to other like commercial-less districts. Is that the way to say it? Low commercial districts, just so that people could see where we're at in the pack. And then what you see here, there are certain districts that we seem to always be compared to say, why can't we be like? And that far range is if we were funded similar to those districts, that's what it would look like in our district. So I wanted to give the entire continuum for the board of extremely low to, sitting at that top 3 or 4, in the metro. Sorry. Yep.
Do you want me to move on to another?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm sorry, yep.
So we have the step ballot language, and then we have the Excel document with the costs. Is that, you want me to go to the
Yeah,
Excel?
so let's hold on the step document.
Yep,
So when we think about what it is that we would engage our community around in terms of a levy, can you keep that up real quickly?
Oh,
That-
yep,
that
sorry.
same graph? Going back to, so to essentially break even, to just stay afloat, that is the 7 mil column, okay? That's the 377 plus the 20-something dollars that's being paid, you know, per month, 377 a year, divide that out, and that was what again, 32?
32.
32-ish?
Yep.
Okay, plus the 20, something that they're paying right now currently. a
yes.
month. So roughly 51-ish, 2-ish dollars a month.
Yes.
That's the ask to keep things afloat in our district.
Dr. Thomas, can I ask, when you say what, that's the ask for keeping things the same?
Yeah.
Is that after the recommended cuts
Yeah,
have
so
been
we
already
make-
made?
We make the cuts, and this is also premised on making 4 million in cuts, or was it 3 million? 3
moving
million in
forward.
cuts.
Next
Every
year.
year, every year,
Every year?
every year.
Okay,
On
so,
top of that.
and I think that's the thing that I think even at the last levy conversation, you were really trying to get the community to understand, is that, when you were giving the separate asks last time, it was, just having the community understand that this ask of the $32 or the 7 mil keeps things the same after all of the proposed cuts that we are to make now. So it's not the same as today, it's the same after all the proposed cuts. And even with passing this amount, it would be a continuum of $3 million cuts per year going forward. And I think that's it's hard to grasp because it is. And so I think, really, I remember the last levy conversation and at the town halls and all of the, district-produced communication regarding it. It was in line with what is being told now. And so I think, however we can solidify that this $7 million ask, keeping things the same, are not as today.
Well, it is essentially, I mean, we're gonna be in this perpetual reduction cycle, with the 7 million that's coming in. And that just kind of keeps us at, forget the term, an even keel. And I just also, so I start there because the conversations, or the question also was, well, last time you went out, we as a district went out, we were asking too much. And so if we moderate the ask more in alignment with what the community surveys were suggesting through Morris Leatherman, what would that entail? And that, again, is that left-hand, the left-hand column, I believe. I'm sorry, the 486 column. So this here is still gonna require that 3 mil reduction. But we're not going to be netting what we would be in this other, so we're actually going underwater by asking that. Okay, so I just wanna help the board understand, last time around during the campaign, when I expressed my feeling of a bit being disingenuous, it wasn't to try to ask for more, just to ask for more. It was really to help the community understand if we align to that survey data, that is a challenge. I just need the board and the community to see that. And so, if you're asking me today, this 7 mil is, in my humble opinion, like that's the lowest maintenance with the 3 million cuts. That's like the floor. Anything below that, we could certainly do that, but it compounds our kind of fall fairly quickly.
Sorry, question on that. I was trying to find, and I don't know if it's posted anymore, the deck that we shared in those town hall meetings.
Yeah, it's.
There's a graph with this,
Yep,
right? It might
yep,
be
it is.
helpful. So
Yeah,
that
it is.
aligns to.
So that, the green line, yeah,
I don't know if it's still on that. Anyway, I
It
could look
is.
later.
Let me-
If you could share this, maybe
Yeah.
I could look later. I just felt like that was a helpful visual to compare
yeah,
the
and
two.
those are the three that we, held up, here it is. So, it was.
On the website.
This, if you go, well, yeah, it's on the website and it's this line
Oh,
right
that one,
here.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's the one that you're referencing, okay?
Is it under the business?
And that green line on there, that was the highest line during our town hall conversations. That was the 377 per year, and by fiscal year 30 is when we would anticipate that we would start to dip below the fund balance threshold. Bless you. The fund balance threshold. So that would carry us for 3 years. All right, and then we had a 180, so it was actually a little less than that other column, that next column to the left. So,
Thank
there
you.
it is.
This is helpful to.
yeah, so, yeah,
So the 377, okay.
that was the three,
Green is the 7 million.
yeah, that was the 7 mil, yeah.
And the orange,
Is the 180, the red, and then the
Okay.
blue, the teal, that is just straight renewal
What we currently
of what we
have,
have now.
no inflationary factor.
added in the 4.5 in there, got it, okay.
Yeah, and then we added, and then trying to understand also, correct me, did we run a 10-year, like what would it take to just do the 10-year run?
Yeah, to see the tenure, we just need to look at that same
And
document.
before you
we
move
were-
off of
oh,
here.
Yep,
The reason why I asked this board is the feedback, and you heard the same comments I did. Well, all of these go below the fund balance. They don't even last the 10 years. So I asked Ellers, or I asked Director Ryder to ask Ellers, what would it take to just get us to the 10-year mark? Like, what do we need every month to make it last 10 years? And then we'll kind of talk about the
Sure.
step conversations.
and 10 million would be the equivalent of taking that 3.3 and the 7. Okay, so that's 15 plus 32, so that's your $45 mark per month, okay?
Say that one more time.
So this was, the green is the 7, and we talked about the red being the 3.3 mil. So from a tax impact perspective, you can take the combination of that 3.3 and the 7, and you'll see it's $45 per month. And that's gonna be your 10 mil mark. Now, that's gonna be then a line that's gonna be above the green, right? If we had that. That would be the 10 mil mark. Okay, I'm gonna move away from this then, and back over to here. So did what I say just make some sense there with regard to the first column of numbers of 3.3? And then the third column over of 7 mil? Those two combined would be your 10 mil. And the tax impact would not be that much different than adding those two columns. So you've got kind of you know, you can put it all together and find the intervals, right? And then the last one being that 15 million mark. Step language next. All right, so then, Ellers shared with us an example of Edina's ballot language they had from a past election. And this is an example of a stepped approach. So what this means is that you can have a levy question and indicate in it when there would be inflationary increases, but then in the year in which you would take a step up to a set number, you don't get inflation that set number year, but beyond that, you can continue to get the inflation. So you can have a period of time in which you can make steps up, so you're not asking for everything right up front, but then when you reach year 3, for example, the language would read, now the amount would be this, and we'd have to set it in advance and make sure that whatever we set it for is appropriate, right? And then from there until the next step, you receive inflation if that's what the language says, and you could do another step. This is only an example of 2 steps. I should say 1 step up, 2 steps, but you can do more. It's just, it's communicating to the public what it means.
Right.
That's the challenge with this type of language. Yep.
In our town hall conversations, you know, utilizing that blueprint metaphor, obviously, as we go higher in the levy value, it drives that monthly payment up. And so can you, kind of like an adjustable mortgage, can you gradually take the community along with you and demonstrate proof concepts along the way of the return on those components? So that's part of, I think, the rationale that might be helpful for our community. One, to just acclimate to the increments of asks, accumulating to a larger dollar amount that could deliver something above just keeping us afloat, while also demonstrating back, and here are the interim results of the investments along the journey. So if we did class size, just arbitrarily, that's a big thing that we hear about. Class size was, you know, years 1, 2, and 3. That's gonna be what we're gonna ask for to affect class size where it matters most. Then maybe years 4, 5, and 6, we then begin to add, you know, advanced differentiation and interventionist support. And then years 7 through 10, it's the next thing, you know. But if we chunk it out and demonstrate how we get the return on the investment in that chunk, I think people could track and monitor that more closely than maybe the amorphous big dollar ask and where's it all gonna go? So just some thoughts for the board to.
I have a question on that. If we chunk it out, because obviously Edina did it, there's a couple of other school districts that have done that.
More are
At the
going
end-
that way.
Yeah, more are going that way, and at the end of the so many years, they have the option to one-time renew. Do they renew at the higher rate?
Oh, nobody has intervaled up to get to that renewal state
Well,
yet.
actually, a couple of districts are already at their maximum tax capacity
Yeah.
that did start with 2 intervals
Yeah,
up.
but if they're at their max, then when they renew,
And then they
would.
renewed at the max
they would
too,
renew
and
at
they
the
just
max.
did the, okay. And that's, I just
would
assumed that they
assume
would
that.
renew at the end
Yeah,
of it, yeah. But I just didn't know since I think only one district that I know of
yeah,
has been in that
But
position. and
I,
renewed.
yeah, and I'd wanna check into that, Director France, because next, I don't wanna misspeak for another district, but when you renew with what you have.
Right.
And so if what you
that
have
point.
is at that point, or
Right.
if what you have is the scaffolded levy, so does
Right.
it step up again for another 10 years?
See, that's what
And
I
that's,
did,
I don't
yeah.
wanna speak to that, whether,
And the district that I'm thinking of was at their maximum tax capacity, and they had never failed a levy
Mm-hmm. well, then
before,
that,
so it
then
didn't,
they
yeah.
could only renew
Right.
at their current.
But that's why I'm saying I wasn't
Yeah.
sure, because that's the
Yeah.
only example I
Yeah.
could find.
Yeah.
The other thing is that, I guess I have a general question. Why would we put numbers out there where we're just going to drop below subsistence level in a couple years? Why wouldn't we start with the lowest level
that we're asking people within a range of a level that will keep us somewhat solvent and
Well,
with minimal growth.
that's actually where we initially started as an admin team with this exercise. And again, I didn't want to assume and get too ahead of the board
Okay.
in this conversation, but that is where we started as our, what we believe to be the floor. So,
The 7 mil, correct?
correct, for the reasons that I've shared.
Yes, for the reasons that you've shared.
I'm not saying that's the thing that you have to do, but I'm just saying I believe that is the floor to just stay afloat, if that's what we believe is the floor.
And I guess to not having full control over state and federal, does that even give us enough of a cushion to stay afloat the whole time?
Well, I mean, that 7 mil staying afloat was with those $3 million in reductions too, so I mean,
Right.
we'd wanna do everything we can to, still continue our efforts to control costs and to take a look at what other, grants and other things that there are out there. I mean, relying on any one source here is not gonna solve our problem. This is a multifaceted, complex issue.
So if we got 7 mil with an inflationary factor after year 2, and we're still cutting 3 million a year, cutting, I mean, are we prepared to tell the
So-
community we're not gonna be able to put the programs in now that we're cutting?
Well,
That's what
I
I'm
mean,
hearing.
it's a tricky one, right?
Yeah.
Because the other thing about that is, remember my 5-year projections that we've got have assumptions built into them that might be, like we were just discussing earlier, is it really necessary to continue the health insurance increase forward for 5 more years at that same rate? Or is it likely that that's gonna come back down? I mean, those kinds of things are things that we're gonna have to tweak and figure out, transportation. What is the result of the full RFP once it's all said and done? Is there any savings there? Are we still going to have this issue at the same rate that we had projected, right? Because I had percentages built in for the next 5 years. So whenever you do a 5-year projection, you'll hear me say the 4 and 5 year, they're out there. So you have to reassess on a regular basis. That's the challenging part, because if you're gonna make a promise to the community, you want to be able to hold that promise up, so hopefully you don't run into things that put a curve into it, that all of a sudden now, you thought you were fine with the assumptions you have. So sometimes doing the worst-case scenario can help you, because at least you're not over-promising and under-delivering, So there's that to consider. It's like, we just gotta find the right balance for us, and we have to be able to communicate what it is that we're doing. My perspective throughout my career has just been, here's what I know. Here are the assumptions. I don't have a crystal ball, I can't promise for sure, but I can tell you that with this information, this is where it would look like.
I guess my biggest fear is if the state decided to hold us at 0% increases, which
Well,
is a clear
I
possibility.
think anything's possible with the state.
Right.
I mean, we're seeing that right now with the special ed, reduction. It's no longer gonna be 250. Now we gotta find, he's backing off 50 million, so that's gonna be 300 million. And also just learning about the literacy incentive aid being tied to the same formula as compensatory.
Yep.
And that's gonna be a huge hit for us, because we don't have the concentration of free and reduced lunch that some other districts do. And so between compensatory and literacy aid, this is our bread and butter for just core support for kids. So yeah,
Dr. Thomas?
yeah, yes.
Just a couple things. Does any district ever do a 5-year levy? Is that ever common?
I've not seen one. I don't know if you've ever seen that in your career.
I mean, I've seen 7, I don't know that I've seen 5.
Okay. Just because, like you said, the unknowns. I mean, I think part of it, to your point, Director France, is that I think our community does expect us to continue to optimize our resources. It's in our strategic plan. And if we have 80 8,000 students in 5 years, we may have to close an additional building. I mean, those are all choices that I think, that's that whole process of optimizing resources and making those cuts while still providing the programs to our community. So
Said we
I
would
think
ever not
that,
optimize resources, but I'm just worried that if we start with too low of a number, we're gonna get bit. That's my concern. And when you give people options and you start with too low of a number, they're gonna obviously navigate to that lower number and then feel that you weren't forthright when we're still cutting and we haven't been able to make marked improvements. So I guess my question is why would we start something that we know we're going to be breathing out of a straw again with? That's,
Yeah, and again, I think this is the conversation,
Yeah.
right? We're not advocating either way, and I'll just pick up on this, pick up on the enrollment piece too. Because that is, so our 4 million, over time, or I mean, our 3 million reductions every year are gonna be heavily tied to the enrollment. So as the high tide goes down, everything across the system will reflect that. So as a community, it's not just, I might not be saying this right, but it's not just about optimizing a resource, it's reacting to the decline. And we have to align for that and take into account for that. But to your point, Director Franz, there's also an expectation, I believe, and I've heard it, I think you all have heard it in these meetings, there is a value add. People are looking for levies to not just be basic operational. Similar to what Dr. Bezek said, that boosters should be doing the plus, the extras. Levies used to do extras.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the situation that we find ourselves here in Minnesota is that many levies, your average levies, I'm not talking about the people that might sit at that far side of the line graph, but they're no longer just the extras. They are the lifeblood, unfortunately, which goes back to, and I don't want to be remiss from saying this, it's a both and. It's a local conversation and it's a state conversation. And so we know that the local is obviously within our scope of control at a much greater rate, but that doesn't mean that our voices can't be where they ought to be and challenge and push back when we have leadership now almost doing a 180, in some regards with the adjusted budget, And I know you all, some of you heard about this too when you were down there. So this leads maybe into a discussion, Director Ryder, just into some of that costing components of just what would it take. So we wanted to start costing out some things that we've heard, just to share. This is not to say this is what we believe ought to happen, but we wanted to give you a sense of, from our academic standpoint, from our vision for what, we believe would help move outcomes for kids in accelerated ways.
Gotta find it.
Okay, sounds good. So, a couple of things that we looked at was the first thing that we looked at was class size. And on average, I think you've heard me say this before, moving class size down by one student, K-12, is about $1 million. And I want the board and our community to understand the research on class size is pretty vast in terms of where you'll have an effect, a rate of change. So when you look at class size, the research will strongly support reducing class size in K-3, all right? And anything above third grade, your class size reduction really could go as high as almost 40 kids in the class, and research will show it doesn't have a great academic effect, all right? So what we looked at here was looking at just K2 to really hone in. So we've, put out some numbers. So this is what it would take to look at a 1:18 ratio. And the ratio in research is somewhere between 16 and 18. But we looked at 1:18 ratio, which is down from our 22 class size target. To do that in K2 and all of our elementary teachers for next year with the consolidation, that would require an additional 22 FTEs, okay? When we start looking at then some of the instructional supports, we currently have reading specialists in our elementary schools. And to match that for two math and reading, to add, just for elementary, 6 math specialists, you see that cost there. Looking at the middle school and high school to have something equivalent to do both the advanced acceleration work as well as interventional support work. You have the middle school and high school allocations there. And then similarly to class size at K2 or K3, when they look at research on class size for high school, it centers around your core subject content areas. And research is in the neighborhood of 28 to 31. And so we just sharing with the board, if we were to do the high school and middle school core classes at a target of 28 and set a target, that's what it would take. And then lastly, what you see there is if we wanted to supplement or do something different with some of the licensed support in those first A through D lines and use academic paraprofessionals, you can see what the average cost for one of those would be. Now, they're not going to get the effect and outcomes as licensed staff necessarily do, but I just wanted to have that out there. So I share that because I want, and now this isn't even going into some of the enhancement types of programs like we've been talking about tonight. I just wanted to focus in on kind of that instructional core, if we made key investments around that instructional core. What costing could look like, okay? Not that we're advocating for this, but gives you a sense. And part of what I wanted to help the board and our community understand is the wants are very, very high for things. And I just, again, just starting here, so if we wanted to enhance other types of programming, then obviously programs are people. So just sharing that with you all to just get perspective, and I know a couple of us have talked about this in our one-on-ones, yeah.
Question, I guess I don't understand like the specialist concept. So like, just take, for example, the middle school instructional specialist. Like, what does that mean and why do we need 6 of them? I guess if I just look at like, we have advanced coursework in every subject, core subject besides math. So we have, I don't know, 2 or 3 sections of advanced MN studies or English or whatever, right? Like, that's probably 1 FTE or even probably half of a teacher. So why do we need 6 to bring back middle school advanced instruction?
It wouldn't, thank you for that. I don't think we're at a position here, I heard the superintendent say, we're not saying this is our advocacy, but what would a specialist do? Teachers are doing the best they know how to do right this very minute. They're not saving their best strategies for any other day. They're using it now. So if we want to perform better, we have to provide support for them to learn and improve their skills. There's hardly any professional learning time on our calendar. As it is, the contract that was just approved negotiated away professional learning time. And so how can I get better? I might need instructional coaching. I need to work with somebody who can help me do better than I do right now. because I'm doing the best I know how to do right now. And we haven't had that investment before. So a specialist allows you to treat both sides of the diamond. So when I say diamond, I'm talking about the intervention side, which has 3 tiers to it, and also the enrichment and extension side. And so you can train and deploy specialists to treat both sides of the diamond without saying, these 7 kids are going to go with this 1.0 FTE all day for intervention, but rather build the capacity of the whole grade level to meet intervention needs. And Director Olstead asked some questions about, well, how might that look at the middle level if we make a cut to a particular program? But I hear strong interest from the board. How are we going to extend and enrich and help and serve any learner who has the ability in any place to extend or enrich or be advanced in their studies? And so it gives you a cost-efficient way to meet the needs of every kid, no matter what side of the diamond they're on, without saying, we're going to pull out these 21 kids and say they get a 1.0 FTE. So it's more nimble and efficient, which aligns with that optimization of resources that I hear is so important. So it's an example of a way we could do that based on the values that we've heard the board express over time.
So, I mean, to be honest, like the feedback that I hear from a lot of teachers is like, I don't want specialists in my classroom. I would rather just a smaller class so that I can focus on teaching. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I hear that a lot where I'm concerned like our community won't value instructional specialists. Maybe it's a lack of understanding, whatever it is. And I know it was on the last levy, I believe, like differentiation specialist or interventionist, and I can't remember how it was worded. And that didn't pass. So like my only concern, again, my concern is how do we get this passed by our community, and do they value this? Like, I don't think when we sat in those town hall meetings, it was, I wish we had more instructional specialists. It was like, I wish we had advanced math in addition to other subjects, or, you know, specific things.
Yeah, I
So-
totally appreciate that. You know, I've worked in districts that have more resources than less, clearly. And frankly, we can't afford a model where we do a traditional build a whole program for any particular learner. This is a more flexible model, and certainly people are going to map onto what their experience was. So when they were going to school, did they experience an educational specialist? No. Do we have to call it that? No. But I think what a community could appreciate, and probably would if we did a good job of communicating, like I hear you advocating, is to say, do you want our teachers to have more capacity to do a better job for every kid, no matter what their needs are or what their special talent or skills are? I think we want to extend and enrich for every kid who needs that support, and we currently don't do it. And we want to intervene for every kid who has a skill or knowledge deficit, and we currently don't do it. And I think the community would probably support that. And so we could tell that story and build a model where we do that and actually do some innovation, even from a place where we have less resources than everybody else in the metro. We could still do innovation with that kind of work. So I think with the right communication and the right partnership with our educational leaders who have high capacity, as I was talking about earlier, we could do something the community actually would want. But folks are going to map onto what they know. And we haven't told them a story about what's possible in a way that's inspiring. And I think we can thread the needle in some ways by this kind of thinking. We don't have to call it educational specialists, though, but meet the needs of every kid, whether they're advanced or at a deficit presently. I think the community would support that.
Yeah, I don't know that
I'm
I
not
agree.
sold on that
to
either,
be honest.
sorry.
Yeah, I think we can talk about it. I mean, it's important for me to hear
I think that.
what you're hearing and to appreciate
Yeah.
that. And
I consistently hear, like, just, again, the feedback from teachers is like, we just want smaller class sizes so that I can focus on doing my job and teaching. And I think from my perspective and what I hear from a lot of parents, we do a really great job in this district helping struggling learners through special ed, through whatever programming. It's our advanced learners that we're not doing as great of a job.
well,
That's the
I
feedback
definitely hear that perception, and I hear that feedback too. And frankly, when I was a principal, we did the thing I'm describing. And now, 40 to 80 schools a year go to that school, including people from Prior Lake just this very week already, today, went to go see, how did you get that going? How did you build that? And it didn't require hordes of new funding, and it didn't require traditional treatments. It took existing resources and said, let's do this in an updated way. And so I think it's super important. parents said the same thing I'm hearing you say. I'm one of those parents that wanted accelerated advancement and enrichment for my learners. But I will say, I appreciate the perception that we're doing a great job for kids who have needs to close gaps. But I'm here to tell you, we aren't doing an exceptional job of that. So that could be the perception, and I totally would validate and honor that. And I'm telling you, we could do a lot better.
And so again, going back to the notion of, the two dominant themes, class size being one of them. If we just look at that, just pure classroom, both at the elementary and the secondary core, that alone is, I can't see that far.
Oh, sorry.
A and F, just looking at,
So
oh, I'm
you said
sorry.
the ratio
A,
and-
F, and E. Thank you.
3.6, 3.8.
Okay, so if we're just looking at class size, now we're looking at kind of researched ranges that show an effect size on outcomes for kids. That is 3.6.
Dr. Thomas, just in interest of time, are we here to make decisions on how this is going to look? Are we more here to talk
Yeah,
about
so-
what this survey is
so,
going to
yeah.
say tonight?
No,
So I
appreciate
don't want to get
that.
too in the weeds
Yep.
of something that we can ponder and come back with more,
So I
more
guess,
conversation regarding. But I do
Yeah.
have some feedback on the survey if we could get to
yeah,
that.
that's fine. So I wanted to just make sure you have that. So if
Appreciate that.
any of that needs to be a part of lists of examples or costing to the community so they understand what class size reduction takes, I want to make sure that they're not just saying class size and they have no idea what it might
Yeah.
cost, so,
Could you share these with us?
Yeah.
Following the meeting?
yeah.
Thank you.
Well, and I do think that was feedback coming out of the other, of the past levy, is that we were not crystal clear with what we were getting as far as if they were to spend, what their investment would be. So I do think that needs to be included in here somehow. I also think we need to somehow add, I had the pleasure of sitting at the table with a previous board director in one of our town halls, and I asked him straight up, like, how did you come up with 624, which was really 924 at the time, with no inflationary factor? Well, they had come off of another big, or maybe was passing another big levy, the big capital levy. So knowing we have a tax-sensitive community, that's where they came up with their dollar amount. So I think including that, if we're gonna include an inflationary factor, I think that needs to be on here somewhere. The other feedback I have is on the beginning of the survey, I have a really hard time, I'm a salesperson, starting out with a negative connotation of, the first sentence is like so negative. And so if we could focus on something that says something like, Prior Lake Savage values are the input of our community to help guide potential next steps, including whether to pursue an operating levy. Like, I don't know why we're starting the first sentence with a negative connotation. It just feels yucky to me. I appreciate the verification of our district residents because that I think is very important. These are our taxpayers in our community. And then, I don't know, the other thing I wanted to say is there any way to add anything? I would not support a levy at any level to add comments or why, or I think that would be
Yeah,
an
an open text
interesting.
box.
Yeah, that would actually be an interesting to get feedback on, well, why wouldn't you support a levy? Because that may be able to help us, how do I say, come back and relook at, how do you turn some of those no votes into a yes, right? And there are no votes who would turn to yes for various reasons. So that's just my feedback, opening to hear from other board directors as well.
Director France?
So first of all, I like the opening paragraph. We need to impress upon people the situation that we're in. We're not trying to sugarcoat anything. And we need to be perfectly clear what's going on. I do believe that number one, under priorities and funding options, is it is a little leading, and I think you're using language in there like intervention and enrichment, et cetera. I'd like to see you guys take another cut at this to make it a little bit more non-educational lexicon, so to speak, simply because whereas I think we all understand what you mean. I'm not quite sure the person that doesn't have a kid in the district and hasn't heard this language, maybe create a little bit more, a little bit less educational lingo focused here. I don't know if we need to preface it also with our recent town hall conversations, simply because that makes it sound like everyone's in agreement, and we, from 48,000 people in our district, of which almost 30,000 are voting age, we had just put down, we've heard similar, here's the options, or here's just what we've heard, what do you think, that sort of thing. And then on number 2 at the bottom, I would put our best first range next to lower investment, and don't do anything to kind of basically step on a rake by giving them a number that we're going to be, again, suffering from. So start with that. Start with something that is going to actually get us through the 10 years at a baseline. Maybe without many improvements, that sort of thing, but definitely is going to get us through with a conservative number, and give smaller $5 increments as you go up into the higher, or maybe $10 increments, whatever's going to get us to that optimum level. Gauge the feedback from that. That would be my input.
Any other board member input on what was presented in our packet? Dr. Olsted?
I know that this is, intended to get feedback from, the people who can vote on it, but I'm wondering if there's a way we can ask all families, including open enrollees.
Well, it would, so this survey would get pushed out to our families, so they would get it through their emails.
Well, okay, that's great, because the number 1, it says we require respondents to verify that they are residents of the Prior Lake Savage Area School District.
No.
And that might not be the
residents,
case. And so
Yeah.
I want to verify that information too. I do think it's important, but I don't want, an open enrollee to read this and go, well, then they don't care what I think, which we clearly do. So I didn't know if
Got it.
somehow we can add,
You can change or add that, yeah.
Director Olsted,
Or-
I just want to challenge you in the fact that though if somebody's coming and living in Burnsville and they say, I would love you guys to spend $22,000 to educate a student and they're not paying taxes, how do you justify that?
well, and
mean, in
I
all
see that.
fairness.
I see that. And I'm thinking if there's like even a checkbox, like, do you currently have school-age children attending Prior Lake Savage Area schools? Yes, we live in the district. No. Or yes, I do, and we open enroll, or something like that. So if I do appreciate their feedback, but I see that point.
Can we
And
get
I
that
think
from
we
their
can,
address?
I'm sorry?
Can we get that from their address? Do we have to actually try to ask
And maybe
them?
we can. I'm just trying to, if we can do one more click to make it
Chris,
easy.
when we've done this in the past, because this is the same process we do, we capture and screen for that, right, when we run it and analyze it?
Because like a Savage address, for example,
And they're
that
tricky
could
because
be
they
us
cross over.
versus.
Yes,
Yeah.
good evening. So in the, I believe it was the post-levy survey we did last spring, or it was a former survey that we did with Dr. Zumbush, was able to look at those addresses in the back end and with help with our business department, would vet those. So we did include open enrolled families. We can do that again. I see your point where if you were an open enrolled family looking at it, you think that you couldn't take it, but it is open.
For that clarification.
I prefer not to
I think
discriminate
the fact
against them at
that,
the
but I think
front
it's the
end.
fact that we're really
And,
focusing on how
and
much
then
people would spend.
basically-
one person
yeah,
talk at a
but
time.
I'd like to add, because I think somebody else has spoken quite a bit. I like her, Director Olsted, I like your idea. I just don't want to call them out necessarily if we can look at it by address.
And I think agreed. So I think if it is easy to, or easy, I don't know if that's the right word. If you can tell from an address by plugging it in that gives us the data that we need, but I see that too, so. Which it sounds like it is,
Any
so.
other board member feedback on this?
Yep.
Director Mason?
Couple of things. Question, first of all, sorry, are we gonna distribute this? And like, specifically, how are we gonna get it out beyond just our district families?
So, yeah, so our, right now would be through our digital newspaper, it would be through our libraries, through QR codes. It would be through our direct email to families who are currently enrolled here. And, you know, any kind of posts in our schools.
Could we potentially post it on, like, have the city post it on their website? On the-
Yeah, I mean,
the
we could
cities,
check
the
with the
two
cities
the
to
three
do-
cities, there's Credit River.
Yeah, yep,
You know, Credit River is the toughest one because there's a
Yep.
lot of, yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, we would access those
And
types of
channels,
venues,
okay.
yeah. And obviously, it would be on our website, and you could scan it that way too,
Okay, great.
or
thank
take it live, here, click live.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I like the format of this. I like that we incorporate, like we've already heard, and so here's what we heard. On question 2, so just so that I'm clear, you are going to add the numbers to these options, yes?
I would add numbers, and I would want to know, I would want to get agreement from the board on that floor.
So like the lower would be
The lower was the 7.
so $32, so we would probably say $32 per month on
Right,
the average
$32,
house, or
yeah,
whatever
yeah, yeah,
quote
we
that.
wouldn't, yep.
So
Third-
you're asking, Dr. Thomas, you're asking for board direction on that?
Well, I want to be mindful, of our conversation tonight. The comfort of the board is 32 the floor, like,
As long as we qualify that, because 32 is for the $525,000 home.
yeah,
And,
we would, we would have that qualifier.
You'd have to have something in there to kind of show them where they stood.
Right, because not
so
everybody
they-
will pay 32, no
Right.
matter what number it is.
Yeah.
Remind me what the last levy was again? I know I asked this last time.
It was
40.
45 for,
45,
It was a 30, a 45.
Okay,
yeah, it was 45.
45 is what was on the, okay.
That would have given us 10 million?
and 32 doubles what we're currently have, basically. It doubles, because it goes up to, if you add the 600 plus the 1,200,
Yeah.
it doubles what we're
About
currently having.
51 or something like that.
Plus,
We'd be at,
what's that?
we're at 5.7, we would then be at 12.7.
Correct. So I think it doubles what we currently have.
Right.
I don't know, it almost feels like we should have a little bit lower of an option, even if we had to reword this to say continue cuts, or, I don't know, I feel like that's a high place to start, given the last one didn't pass, and the Morse Leatherman survey or whatever it was, that
Yeah.
I don't know.
So again,
But-
that could be, I mean, you could put low, you know, we were trying to keep 3, but, you know, if we wanted to add a 4th and say lowest, lower, moderate, higher.
But like, if you
and-
say, like, the lowest investment is basically renewing the levy plus $20, we're still having to make cuts, or, I don't know, I just feel like that is something we might want to point out on here as a low point, because you're still asking our taxpayers to pay more money while we make cuts, I don't know. Again, this is hard because we went with the higher amount the last round and it didn't pass, so I'm just advocating that we
Sure.
do something that passes. And my other feedback on this, besides the levels, is just, I think we should be more explicit, because that was part of the feedback from the vote knowers, where we say address class sizes. I think we should explicitly say address K through 2 class sizes. And, you know, adds targeted student supports, what does that mean? So like,
Well-
I think we have to be more explicit.
Well, and that's why I brought up this
Yeah.
conversation on the thing, so you all had a sense of what that could potentially be, the specialist conversation.
Yeah,
you know.
it's just that what I consider a student support, somebody else might think it's totally different, right? And so then we're not coming back with what we promised, and that's
Right.
where.
Well, and I would say too, like, you know, the biggest thing that I keep thinking about myself after, you know, the past levy, the town halls, all of the things, is like, we need to make sure that we are continuing to point people to the source of information, which is the district. And while if we're trying to get agreement upon what the asks are, or if you're trying to get direction from the board tonight as of what the floor is, what I heard you say when you were sharing all of the slides that you and your team had worked on was that the 7 million is the floor, and that's kind of where you and your team felt would be the bottom ask. And when I hear you say that, and when I hear the context of your senior leadership team, I want to take your recommendation of that's the floor. And while we do have a tax-averse community, that has been our situation for decades. And given our current situation, offering a tax increase that does not meet that floor of keeping things the same while continuing to face reductions, given our projected decrease enrollment, it was, again, going back to where you stood with the levy ask and presentation, 2 years ago. While I understand, maybe we should just do less so that we get something, I don't know that is the best thing for our community. I mean, when we're thinking about what our role is as board members, our role is to uphold community trust in our public education system. And the way that we do that is by listening to our superintendent, his senior leadership, and all of the district staff that pour into our students and families. And it's easy to take information as our understanding of what's given as board members and to, have questions, and we're to bring those questions. But if we're not displaying trust to what the team is telling us, we are not upholding our duty. And so with that being said, my thought is that the floor is the floor.
So why don't I do this? We can go back and rework this to incorporate some examples and some costing based on what I heard dialogue tonight. Would it be okay for me to just email individually the board members to say, give me your thoughts, give me your feedback? It's not going to be in a group. We're not going to have chats, but like your direct feedback to the revised version of that. And then,
So that your team can bring back,
and I'm hearing from you all, and if you have perspective, then just bring it back to me, and then, because we're still targeting this to be so, like that second or third week in April that would go out.
so would this come back to study session?
This would have to come back to the 13th meeting,
If you want to keep that timeline.
if you want to keep that timeline.
Because I think that, it's very helpful for the district. This is my opinion, but I believe it is very helpful for the board that the district brings forward their best recommendation. And I understand wanting to get board feedback. And so if the best way for you to do that is to send out an individual ask from board members.
Keeps it from
To
getting
to receive the feedback so that you can bring forward the best recommendation as far as you and your team after hearing from the board, then I would suggest
Then I'll do that.
doing that.
That's how I'll manage it. Okay. All right, and then we could still make the 13th for any kind of action,
Okay.
and then it can still hit the window.
Are there any more questions or feedback on that item?
I just want to say, if it's okay.
Please, yes.
Thank you for the hard work that you did put into this and for the preparation and the breakdown. That helped, it helped me a lot, so I appreciate the hard work.
And I will send that to you all, the costing, so you can just get a sense.
Oh,
of that.
great.
That would be great.
And then I just have a question. Is the whole intent around this survey similar to what we did with the Morris Leatherman survey, though?
No, the Morris Leatherman was
mean-
much more extensive. This
No, I
was
understand, but
full-
is the intent, like the
The- the
end?
in- the intent
end
is to-
intent
what
is
do you
to
want
understand
and
what
how
our
much are you willing to
community-
pay?
What does our community want?
Yeah, like asking the
I mean, it's-
community, what
I
does the
understand
community
we
want?
need to listen to the district's recommendation, but at the end
Yep.
of the day, the community are the voters.
Yeah. we-
So
Absolutely.
we need to listen to our community, so.
Absolutely.
Yep. so
Okay, I just wanted to understand the intent.
It's a both and what are they willing to pay for that want?
Okay, thank you, and thank you for the information, it's
Mm-hmm.
very helpful.
Good. All right, there's no other items left on the agenda except to adjourn. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.